Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second interview of IAPSS team members. I am IAPSS President Justin Patrick, and I'm here with IAPSS Asia Chair Rutaba Tariq. Rutaba, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
That's great to hear. So our first question would I just asked you to tell us a little bit about maybe about yourself, your academic background, your experience in IAPSS, including your current position, and anything else that you would like to share with us in that regard.
First of all, thank you for doing this. I think it's a great way for us to connect with a lot of people who are inquiring about IAPSS and want to know a bit more about it. A bit about myself. So I am currently doing my master's in international relations from the University of Karachi in Pakistan. I have an honors degree in the same, and I've always been for the past 3 years involved in projects and organizations that focus on youth skill development, especially their capacity building in domains like leadership or policy making, so on and so forth. With that regards, I've been part of Pildat Youth Parliament Pakistan. I've been part of OIC Youth Forum. So the list goes on and on. Finding IAPSS was a pure accident. I did not even know something like this existed. I did not know that there was an association or a network of political science students or social science students in general where you can just sit down and work together with people who had similar interests and similar backgrounds. My friend actually found the website of IAPSS somehow, and I ended up applying just because the idea in itself was so brilliant. I think I applied last year in 2019 in December, and I got on board as a projects and event coordinator at Asia actually. But then soon enough, I realized there was a lot of scope in IAPSS. So if you're somebody who's new, is not very aware or privy of how the team works, there's a lot of scope and room for growth. And if you're somebody who's dedicated and who's very hands-on, who feels like that they have these leadership skills and they're very motivated, I think there's a lot of room for you to be involved in IAPSS, and you'll find yourself, climbing up the ladder every now and then, which is also very, very encouraging. And yeah, came the General Assembly this past May. I contested for the elections. I stood up and ran for the position of IAPSS Asia chair. I got elected and we're here.
Yeah, and I guess that sort of leads into our next question about more specifically about your term as IAPSS Asia Chair. How has it been so far, and what are some of the accomplishments that you're particularly proud of?
I mean, IAPSS is a world in itself, because we're all operating online. None of us have actually ever met each other, and somehow we have been able to make this organization survive and be able to do so many events connected with each other just through online platforms. So the mandate started with a lot of question marks, so to say. I wasn't really sure where we were headed, but what I did have was a brilliant, brilliant team. Just so everybody recognizes, just so everybody knows, one of the most brilliant things that I find about IAPSS is that I get to work with people from all over the world. And you may not realize how powerful that is, but it is in terms of how you work. There's just the fact that you get to network with so many different people, that you get to work with so many different ideas, just improves the quality of the work you're doing, and it kind of helps you discover your own self. And so IAPSS Asia, I find myself working with people from Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, my own country, Nepal, Malaysia, Indonesia, you name it, and there were people from these countries. And so we had all the room in the world to play with. So we literally curated the entire year, this mandate ourselves, contributed. All the members of IAPSS Asia team contributed their ideas, and we crafted all of these different projects and events and all these ideas and strategies we came up with. So this year for me, this mandate has been about building the team, because regionalization is still such a new and fresh prospect for IAPSS. We're still trying to find our footing. So it was all about team building. So we've really welcomed a lot of new faces at IAPSS Asia, and we're still welcoming new faces. And to that, we're still looking for more members to come join IAPSS Asia. So if there are people listening to this, and if there are people who are interested in just being part of IAPSS, I would highly encourage them to check out IAPSS's website, our social media pages, and have a look at what's available. And even if they don't find any available position we highly encourage reaching out to us or emailing us. Whether you reach out to Justin or me or anyone else at IAPSS, I guarantee that we will reply to you guys, and will help you understand what IAPSS is all about. So on terms of team building, that's that. But in terms of the projects that we've been able to do, we've been able to do a lot of projects. I think to date, and we were just talking about this in our general meeting, we've done 7 country events, and that's just from May to this date, which is November. So we have still like roughly half a mandate left for a lot more other projects. So we were able to do these webinar series, these lecture series with a lot of professors in collaboration with them. One that stood out for me was a young politicians roundtable. We were able to get speakers from, I think, 4 to 6 different countries. We were able to talk about political life for young people in these countries, and that was really eye-opening, because I found that so many things were so similar. For example, if I'm from Pakistan, I found that the landscape for young politicians in India was very similar to how we live, the kind of restrictions we face or the kind of hurdles we face, and what means that they're employing to make sure that their political voices are not curbed down. I found a lot of inspiration in that. We were able to hear from all of these different people from different backgrounds. So that conversation was very enlightening from the webinar series that we did. Apart from that, we recently did, which again I'm very proud of, we were able to do an academic conference where in conjunction and partnership with the Department of Political Science, University of Mongolia. And this conference was just for students from Asia who were writing about Asia and Asian politics in general. We had 12 people who presented, 12 young researchers who presented their papers. And now we're going to have these papers be published in the Journal of the Department of Political Science, the National University of Mongolia. So we're very ecstatic about the fact that we're able to sort of do what we were meant to do at IAPSS Asia, which is sort of create a culture that is conducive to new thinking in academia, and where young people can have the chance and take the risks to be able to do what they want to eventually do as scholars in their own respective fields. So I'm particularly proud of that one. And yeah, we've had so many other events. We had the Uzbekistan events where we also partner with universities in Uzbekistan, which was also very fantastic. We had the UN 75 consultations, which I think the entire global team did, and IAPSS Asia ran about 4 of these consultations. We engaged more than 200 people on that. We had like a dozen speakers. So yeah, it's like a world in itself. I can go on and on about all the events that we've done and how proud I am of that, but just like I do want to take the time out to thank my team. I think I don't want to name them, but they know who they are. They've made it possible. This is run by volunteers, so they're really driven by the ideas that they bring forward. And IAPSS Asia, what keeps us running is that everyone gets in one way or the other to bring their own personal projects on board. So all of these different ideas, they're part of the individuals who run the team, which is where this becomes so magical. And for us to be able to execute them collectively is the one thing that I'm very proud of. So no matter what the scale of the event, the fact that we've been able to do all of this is just magnificent.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think especially with given all that's going on in the world as well this year too, it's been phenomenal. And as I'm sure those viewing this are getting a little excited about what's to come in IAPSS Asia. So that sort of leads us into our next question. What are your plans for the rest of the year? And is there anything you would like members to be aware of, like upcoming events and projects?
Yeah, so a lot of exciting things are actually coming up. So if you're somebody, again, I'm just going to plug the fact in that we're always looking for new members. We have a lot of representation from South Asia and Southeast Asia, but we don't have a lot of representation from Middle East. So if there are people listening from the Middle East, by any chance they stumble upon this, I would love to engage them into the team, especially because IAPSS Asia is the largest region for IAPSS. We have like 50 plus countries under our mandate. So we're always looking for team members. And the reason I say that is because all our upcoming events are going to be interesting to all of them, all of the people or young political science students or social science students in general in Asia. In the month of January, I believe we'll have 2 events, country events, India and Pakistan. So we're going to be having something, I don't know how much I can tell, but the India event is based on SDG. So SDG number 4 14 and 16, if I'm not wrong. So it's going to be a competition. So if you are somebody who's always been interested in contributing towards the SDGs, you might want to stay in touch with us, our websites, our pages, our social media handles, and learn a bit more about that. So we'll be sort of crowdsourcing all the projects, and we're going to be sort of mentoring and assisting all of these projects and helping them scale these projects up. So that's something that I'm incredibly excited about. For the Pakistan event that is under wrap, we're actually working on creating a platform where we can connect young and upcoming leaders with sitting MPs or MNAs in Pakistan, or leaders who are working on district level, so to say. We can talk about leadership generally, what leadership means to the coming generation, what is meant to the previous generation, and where are we failing, because there's a leadership deficit that we feel is existing in Pakistan. And we think that this forum could actually be reflective of similar problems elsewhere in Asia as well. So that's another project that I'm incredibly excited about. It's also going to happen in January. And then at the end of the mandate, we're going to be focusing on two major events, actually. One is the networking event, which is we're still speculating the date, but the networking event is basically a platform for us to connect with all of the partners that we've engaged with over this year, and also all of the potential partners that we want to continue engaging with. So again, if you're somebody with an organization, no matter how small or big, we definitely encourage student-run organization. We definitely run associations that have similar ambitions and aims and objectives like IAPSS, to just come forward, connect with us. And that networking event would be just like a more formal platform for us to meet all of them, have a conversation and figure each other trajectories out, and maybe even brainstorm some new events for the next mandate, who knows. So that's one. And the last is a regional conference. So every region has their own conference to plan each mandate. So we're planning ours. If there are objectives and aims like ours, especially student-run organizations or associations, we're very happy to entertain them and get them on board. But that's not the only sort of scope that we deal in. We're also working with other organizations, those that work on the SDGs, so on and so forth. So we're welcome to hosting them, and we're very interested and eager to host them in the networking event as well. So if there are organization or partners or potential partners listening in, feel free to write to us, and we'll definitely reel them in and give them more information about the networking event. And the last major thing for this mandate was going to be a regional conference. This year's regional conference for IAPSS Asia is focused on youth again, but on urban governance in particular, how young people could contribute more towards urban governance, how they can learn more about urban governance in a few focus countries like India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal. But more details on it would be published by the end of December or early January. So again, if there is anyone who wants to either be part of the organizing committee, they can write to us, or if they're just somebody interested in being a participant, they can just make sure that they, again, follow and like all our mediums, whether it's YouTube or Facebook. That's the only way you guys are going to stay in touch with us. And if you're somebody who is much more meticulous, I would recommend getting a membership for IAPSS, because we run these newsletters, and we're much more accessible when you're a member of IAPSS, and we get to hear from you directly, and it's much easier for us to incorporate your feedback into the work we do, and that way IAPSS stays the democratic institution it claims to be. So yeah, that in terms of the events that are upcoming, this is all.
All right, so definitely a lot to look forward to. And so for the next question, we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about what your vision is for the future of IAPSS. So, you can go a little bit perhaps differently. I know the previous interview, we kind of talked at length about a few things, but the floor is yours.
I don't know. I'm slightly ambitious in terms of planning things. If somebody wants to ask me, what the future of something is, I'll go all out. The thing with IAPSS is I wanted to sustain and I wanted to thrive because it's a one of a kind organization. even after having worked a couple of months at IAPSS, I realized and recognized there are not a lot of platforms like IAPSS that exist on the scale that IAPSS does and has been able to survive the way IAPSS has. And so it's absolutely pivotal, A, for IAPSS to continue surviving and thriving in the coming years as well. For me, the future of IAPSS would 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 mean that we have more members and we have more representation. Obviously the regionalization process is a good step in that direction, but we're still a far away from the kind of, I think, diversity that we envisioned that IAPSS would hold. So there's a long way for us to see more representation in IAPSS global, also the regional level. So I really just want more people be part of the membership. I would, I mean, this might be like jumping the gun a lot, but I think I would like IAPS to have a significant voice all across the world in their own respective government and their own in each country's decision-making bodies, and ideas and methods on how you can advocate for your own rights, which is something I feel, and I speak from a very personal experience. I speak from where I am in the part of the world that I am. We struggle a lot with representation. We struggle a lot with systematically presenting public opinions to decision-making bodies in our countries like Pakistan, India, and all the respective countries that I've had a chance to work with and learn from during my tenure at IAPSS Asia. And we really do need organizations and platforms like IAPSS to have, who are independent. That's like one of the biggest thing about us. We're autonomous like that, to be able to have a platform that's strong enough for us to present all the concerns that young students, political science students, or young advocates have, and they want leaders to hear from. We don't have that. We're not systematically as put together, unfortunately, as a demographic. So I would actually, it would be lovely to see IAPSS play a role in that. And I know that there's definitely a vacuum for that in Asia. I know Central Asia, Middle East, and South Asia, these are three regions that often get incredibly and highly underrepresented. And if there is representation, it's scarce. Again, the fact that I got an education that allowed me to speak and have a conversation with you in English, or be able to surf the internet, just means that I'm slightly more privileged enough to be here and then speak as if I can speak on behalf of young people in Asia, which is not true. And the only way we can curb this is by making sure that we have big enough room, which IAPSS has, and so more people can come in and inform the structure of IAPSS and what we need to do, and also what the decision-making bodies around the world, whether we talk about international INGOs, international non-governmental organizations like UN or EU, or whether we talk about our own respective decision-making bodies in our own countries, right? Our parliaments, or all other state-level institutions. We need access to them, and I think IAPSS could be the medium in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think we also have an issue where, the presidents perhaps of a national or local political science student association might just kind of join as an individual member, when in fact they can join as an association and get all their members signed up, right? And we're very flexible with this in terms of, the price and stuff, so we can make sure that it's an accessible amount, but also one that allow students to contribute to what IAPSS is, right? And at least have that, level of, so it defines us as being a student-run organization. But in terms of growth, right, and expanding further, I know the past couple of years with the regionalization initiative has been quite an undertaking in terms of expansion and growing our teams and outgrowing our reach. So I guess, what are your ideas, I guess, in terms of reaching out, in terms of how do we grow these communities in particular? How do we reach out to students in Asia, in the Middle East?
Well, it's a tough one, especially because I think COVID hit us out of nowhere. Um, Logically speaking, it would have made a lot more sense for us to mobilize on the ground, which I would have loved for my team and I to do, to be able to go to universities, to be able to have meetings with student associations on ground, to be able to have a sit down, even a cup of tea, just to have a conversation, to be able to understand what they think about IAPSS, or whether they knew about IAPSS to begin with, and how they think IAPSS could shape itself to be more conducive to organizations or associations like this. I still wait for the world to open, and if that happens, that would be the first thing that I would like to do. But my team and I would like to do is have like a conversation, sit down with them, because the thing is, there's still disparity online. I mean, not all organizations, associations, especially from the third world or developing countries, can access can use or have access to internet, and so this is not a very easy medium or even an accessible medium for them to come and be part of it, which I very much worry about in Asia, especially when you talk about Middle East or South Asia in particular. But up until that happens, I think I plan to reach out to them the way that we have been for the past couple of months, using our internal networks, but also partnering with them for different events. Yeah, with respect to reaching out, that's the only thing that I think we can do at the moment.
Okay, and I know that you mentioned the event that you organized with about student politics in Asia. Has
Yeah.
would you maybe be interested in sharing a little bit about what we've learned, I guess, in terms of what it's like in Asia for student politics, and has anything changed since then, or are we seeing any? Is the trend sort of continuing?
So it's interesting because I think you were there. We had like 6 countries. So all of these 6 countries have similar yet different landscapes. For example, in Pakistan, we learned, and I speak about Pakistan because I'm from there. The student unions were not quote unquote banned. There was a period in Pakistan where student unions were not allowed to, assemble at universities. But since then, even after the ban was lifted, it was highly discouraged by university administration. So they're not really that supportive of student unions assembling at the university campuses. It's not a very conducive environment. The past year, we have seen a lot of change in Pakistan, where you've had a big movement specifically by the so there's a big movement of students who have been working to the restoration of student unions, and they've gained quite the momentum. The guest that joined us was one of the leaders from one of the cities in Pakistan, who was helping mobilize the entire movement, and they've made particular demands from the governments, asking for there to be a more conducive environments towards student unions for them to operate. And since then they've taken up a lot of issues. They've talked about the recent hike in fees, with COVID and everything. There've been immense budget cuts, so universities are not getting the same amount of funds that they were getting, which means they'll have to raise the fees of the students to sort of just cover up the differences, and that's just going to be incredibly terrible. So if you know anything about state universities, if you don't offer education at a subsidized price, that means many students will not be able to get access to higher education, and that's a tragedy in itself. So at least there's a space for students to be able to talk about this and raise their concern, which has changed, at least in Pakistan. In India's case, it was slightly different. They're against a government that they don't really feel is representing India's cause in the right manner. There's a right-wing leader who they feel is stoking a nationalistic, a nationalistic or a hyper nationalistic, so to say. Sentiments in India, and so you'll see a lot of people in the movement that are spearheading this are young people. So we had Aishi Ghosh from India in that panel, and she talked about young people spearheading these movements where they were protecting or trying to protect the democratic essence of India, or what they thought was being taken away from them. And to that end, I've read up that there have been arrests being made in India for people who have been protesting. So it's a very dangerous landscape for political science students or young politicians in a lot of countries in this region. I can go on and on about what the landscape looks like in Asia, but the fact of the matter is, we need a platform. We need a platform where we can reiterate that there is an urgent and immediate and very important need for students to be able to gather, to create their own associations, and have a place to be able to talk to their leaders in an unthreatening, safe environment, which is something that we're lacking to whatever degree, but we're lacking across Asia. So yeah, to that end, I think that's only what I would want to add at the moment. But we can have like an elaborate conversation on that.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like there's crises all over the world, right? Like we've,
Yeah.
like for example in Hong Kong, right? There are the issues there with the political crisis where the student union just seemed to stop replying to kind of external emails going in, so we're not sure what the status is,
Mhm.
or as you mentioned, the issues in Pakistan and India, and also in other continents as well. Like this year, we've heard about Nigeria, we've heard about Peru, we've heard about Belarus. So it's
But it's
yeah, I guess.
interesting, because there are good practices as well. I'm sorry for jumping in, but one of the
Oh, yeah.
panelists was from Nepal, and right, and he was the general secretary of one of the literally youngest political parties in Nepal. When I say literally youngest, every member in their political party was 35 or below, and so they were setting a precedence, and they were a local party, granted, but just the fact that that political party exists in a country like Nepal, which is so close to us, it is an indication of how much can be done for more inclusion from young people in politics, whether directly or indirectly. But there is definitely a need for that. So there are good practices, and there are good indications, there are good indicators like that exist. But again, we need to assemble ourselves to be able to learn from that. I had no idea something like that existed had I not done that event that we did, and that kind of opened up our eyes to a world of possibilities. So on one end, you're right, we do have this world of crisis where we feel like we're getting more restrictive by the minute. And I think we need to curb that more quickly, because I think it's an uphill battle, so to say, because we're getting the crises are increasing much more frequently with a lot more power than we're able to recoup, which is scary.
I guess one of the reasons is that we're just hearing about it more just due to communication technology and the speed at which we receive information. I was going to ask, what can organizations like IAPSS do, in your view, to help in these kinds of crises that go on? What can we do as a student association who has the potential to, rally students to a cause and get international support for, certain causes?
Yeah. For me, I think I'm just going to probably reiterate what I said earlier. I think we need to get in touch with a lot more local organizations in these respective countries if possible, which I know that it's difficult. Like you said, communication could be cut off. There could be severe security threats in some cases, and sometimes students are actually um, not up for taking the risk. They think it's too much of a risk just to have be engaged with an international organization and then take up the cause. But I think it's important for us to stay connected. It's important for us to create an environment that is conducive for all sorts of voices. So the first and obvious things, I think we need to connect with local voices, because they're going to be the true representative whatever is happening on ground. In that case, I think IAPSS is a wonderful platform, because we're an international platform, we're autonomous like that. I think it could help them um, just separate from their own localities and then bring their concerns on an international platform where they'll find other people who are interested in these causes, right? And then of course we can help shape their cause, because essentially we're a network of different minds and ideas. This helps tremendously. We can share in our knowledge, which is very important. If there's an association, let's say from Pakistan, that comes at IAPSS, um, and we're running these other advocacy, like the global student government initiative that we're running. So there's a lot of expertise on that platform that can help student organizations in Pakistan learn from their experience and help shape them their ideas that can help them execute those ideas in their own respective countries. It may not seem like a lot, but it does make an immense amount of difference. If I am able to learn from a successful model elsewhere and replicate that in my own locality, in my own country, and if that model is more conducive and successful, then it saves me a lot of time and heartache to be able to do that. So I think IAPSS can be that platform where we can exchange ideas, where we can amplify the voices of these local organizations or national organizations, and wherever possible can also lend our support we can assist them in their causes and their campaigns, because that's why we are here. So that's the third thing. But I think on the other end, which is also something related to what I talked about in terms of how I see the future of IAPSS, I think if we obviously if we stay together, I think we might be able to connect these local organizations or national organizations to the higher up, so to say. And this is a very vague word, but for example, if we work with the UN, we might be able to connect them with these people and have them connect to the right kind of organization to be able to have their say, which is very important. Like I said, I completely believe that IAPSS is on a trajectory where it is, and it should be seen as a legitimate representative of political science students, and with that, the causes that these students represent. So I would not be hesitant. I would not hesitate to talk to my MNAs or MPAs and go to them and say, look, this is a problem, and I need you to assist us in that problem. That's highly possible, and I think IAPSS can definitely bridge that gap as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you sort of mentioned connecting with local organizations. And on this regard, I know we've talked about the possibility after the pandemic of doing sort of events with both an online and an in-person component to, increase accessibility. And I know you mentioned the possibility of having events with multiple physical locations. Would you maybe like to elaborate on that a little bit, and maybe we can discuss some ideas about what that might look like in the future?
Yeah, could I ask you to repeat that question?
Yeah. So I know we've talked about the possibility of having events online and in person, right? And you mentioned the idea of having multiple physical locations for big conferences and stuff, so we can make it more accessible, so folks don't have to travel across the world per se. There might be, for example, a spot in their country or continent, right, in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
So what would you maybe like to elaborate on that a little bit, and maybe outline some ideas for how that could be envisioned in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy for us. I think my immediate thought for Asia just goes to universities and student clubs at universities, because that's where you're likely to find all the people that you want to find. So for me, I think reaching out individually to all those people who either leading such associations, or are in the executive committee, or on the board of such student clubs, would be the first thing. I think we can set up, if obviously the first thing is, if you're within their own regions, or within their own, if you share the same physical space as them, you would like to go and visit them in person, right? If not, then obviously you'd like to reach them out via email or something like that. But if that happens, I would love, for example, for a country coordinator to go and at least visit as many universities or associations and their offices within the city that they're residing in, have a conversation with them, have a meeting with them, and then see where it goes. The idea for me at the moment, what we're lacking is, we're lacking local engagement. We're present, of course, over here as is IAPSS Asia, but we don't really have a lot of presence on the grassroots, which I think is highly problematic. So the first step would be to identify and reach out to these organizations, whether in person, which is obviously preferred, or whether through email or even calling them up. Yeah, so I think that will be the first step for me. And this will happen through our country coordinators, which play an incredibly important role. They sort of are the ambassador for their regions. IAPSS Asia has a lot of country coordinators at the moment. I cannot in good faith allow them to visit any universities at the moment, but they have been able to create these partnerships while staying back at home. So I would imagine that the country coordinators would play a very critical role for IAPSS in general, in reaching out to these organizations or association or student clubs or projects within their own localities. I hope I heard your question correctly.
Yeah, I think that encapsulates it quite well. The next question, I know that you mentioned the Global Student Government Initiative, and so far that topic has been a recurring one now in these interviews. So I guess in terms of reaching out to student governments in Asia to to talk to them about this initiative and see if they want to get involved. What would you recommend in terms of, is there any particular approach that we should use? And I know there are certain cases like whether it's Hong Kong or India, where I believe the latter has multiple student unions that may kind of compete against each other in some situations for, support among the students, and, issues like where in Pakistan, as you mentioned, regarding assembling at universities themselves, and perhaps other organizations that maybe haven't had a lot of contact with, their counterparts outside their country's borders. So what would you recommend in terms of, reaching out to these student organizations, or if there are any of them watching, perhaps, what would you recommend?
So for me, and I don't see competition as a bad thing necessarily. I don't see differences as being bad. I think they're necessary and they're important. So the first thing needs to be very, very clear. IAPSS is not averse to differences. And if you have differences, if you are competing, that's a good thing, because that means whatever voices you're bringing are your own. And that means that we're also hearing you from a perspective that is your own. And if there are multiple organizations from a similar country, that does not mean we end up preferring one over the other. That just means we have a better representation, understanding of the landscape that's actually there in those countries. So IAPSS, by virtue of being an international association, an international platform, has the capacity to be to not be partisan, so to say, and that I think is a strength. And I think student associations, if they're listening in at any point to this conversation, should actually find that to their advantage. The fact that IAPSS is a global association, so we're not associated with any government, or we're not leaning towards one side or the other. That means we could be a conducive environment that can amplify their work without distorting, without having our own sort of twist to it, because we really are generally driven by our members, so to say, right? And those members could come from all quarters of the world, and they could have all sorts of ideologies. So we're not averse to that. So I think that's the one thing that need to remember. We're not asking organizations to change their approach just because they're coming on board with IAPSS. And I think that's the biggest guarantee I can give for anyone who is an association in Asia, because they feel very protective about it, and rightly so, because one thing they don't, international cooperation is actually very important and very healthy. Whether we look at the Commonwealth Association and how there's a Commonwealth Youth Association, if I'm not incorrectly naming it, these associations are absolutely very imperative, and they work very closely with international government organizations or NGOs, and they inform the decision making at that level. And so they have these representation that get elected every year or two, I don't know, but they're important, and they're very healthy platforms for young people to have their say. And we need a political platform for young people to have their say as well, because one thing I absolutely dislike, and I think in our we're trying to be so apolitical. Young people, a lot of them are trying to be so apolitical. I don't know whether they think it's cool or whether they think it's too much work. I don't know. I think it's counterproductive. Everything is political, whether you like to admit it or not, everything is political. Your life is political. And so it's absolutely important for us to take charge of that. So it goes at the very root and the purpose of why we get together as a community, why international cooperation is important, why having your say in politics is important. So we're asking ourselves some very fundamental questions, which I think is the time we live in. But but it also kind of amplifies or the importance of what we're doing here at IAPSS. So again, if you're an organization, if you're part of an organization that works on similar objectives like ours, I'm not speaking as ambassador to IAPSS, but I would absolutely love to have you or your organization on board with us. And yeah, that would be about it.
All right. So I guess from here we've talked about a good range of topics. Is there anything else you would like to add to the conceptual portion of this interview, or shall we move on to the next part?
Not the conceptual part, but I think one thing I think we haven't been able to touch upon, if this was an interview done on IAPSS, I would want to talk about the fact that we're not talking about diversity in terms of the regions alone. We're talking about diversity in terms of gender. We're talking about diversity in terms of your abilities as well. IAPSS is very encouraging of ensuring that we have representation across the board. So if you come from a background or a group that feels like they've been marginalized, or that doesn't usually get as much space in their own home countries for something like this, then IAPSS would be a good platform. So if you're differently abled, if you're a woman, which I know could be very challenging in our own countries, and we're trying to deal with the subject which is politics, where we're very sidelined in our own respective countries. IAPSS could be a really good alternative. And so highly encourage women and people with different abilities to explore IAPSS if politics is something that they want to learn about, work on, and find an international community that is more likely going to embrace them than not. Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to definitely add.
Yeah, a very good point indeed. And yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Commonwealth Student Association, because I met with one of the representatives this past week. So it's yeah, hopefully we can do some collaboration in the future for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess in this next portion, it's, I guess, let's call it special topics, where you get to talk about some special initiatives going on that you'd like to maybe promote or raise some more awareness about or provide some ideas on. And I know you have here the regional conference, the General Assembly. I'm guessing the one coming up on December 12th at yeah, 14 hours Central European time, but I'm not sure what that would be in Pakistan time, and then joining IAPSS Asia as well.
Yeah, so I probably in SRC, the Asian SRC or HR Oceania SRC is doing that. I don't know that we don't have an event on December the 12th, but I've already talked so much about my events. I don't want to bore some people like talking a bit more about it. But if there was one event that I wanted to just talk about, that would be the regional conference. That would be it. I think it's going to be the biggest gathering for us. It's going to be the biggest. We're trying to do this in a hybrid fashion. We're trying our best to assemble in a place physically, because we want the team to meet. We want to meet our members as well in person, which is very important. And it's an interesting topic. Urban governance is something that's getting a lot of traction for the right reasons in countries like ours, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so if we can contribute, IAPSS Asia can contribute into this arena where we can connect, we can build the capacities of young people and how they could be more effective citizens or contributors to their own local governments or their own local bodies. And if we can bridge the gap between their own local bodies and themselves, I think, yeah, we'd be very proud at IAPSS Asia for that. So if you're somebody who's interested, just again, just type IAPSS on Google and have a look at all our Facebook pages, our websites, and definitely get on board as a member, because that's the only way we'll be able to hear what you have to say and maybe even shape some of the events that we're doing. But I don't think I want to sell any more events in this already very long interview.
All right, and December 12th would be our General Assembly. That's the important date to in the future. I know you wanted to maybe touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, it's such a shame that I absolutely forgot the date of the General Assembly on December 12th. But yes, our General Assembly is going to be on December 12th. And so for anyone who, if you've been part of this interview so far and you don't know how IAPSS operates, I highly encourage that you check the website out and learn about us. We're a democratic institution, so all of the leadership positions get elected. None of us are here because we had some clout. None of that whatsoever. We basically have to convince our members that they think that we're capable enough to be in the positions that we're in. And the General Assembly is a great showcasing of that. We have, I think, the General Assembly, like Justin mentioned, on December 12th, where we putting forward new items. I'm not too sure what those items are, but I think it's just be an assembly for all the members. We'll be taking important decisions of the mandate. To that end, I think the one thing that I would really want to talk about is encourage people to join IAPSS Asia, because I think I mentioned that at the beginning as well. You could be in the position that I am in very easily. If you're a member of IAPSS, all you have to do is contest for this position, and in the General Assembly have the same floor that I will have, and make your pitch the same way that I will make. And between the two of between the competitors, whoever makes the greatest pitch or convinces the IAPSS membership that they're better in their position, they'll get voted in, and that's that. So if you are someone who believes in your own capabilities, if you believe that you are somebody who can do this job much better, I highly encourage, and I do the same with my team. I highly encourage for you to check out the General Assembly, to stand up for position, to submit in your profiles. Obviously, Justin's far well versed in how that happens. All you have to do is, I think, submit a personal statement and your CV, and just show your interest or intent to stand up for a position. And just FYI, for anyone who doesn't know, you don't necessarily, if you're from Asia, you don't necessarily have to stand up for a position of the IAPSS Asia chair. You can actually contest for the position in one of the positions in the global team. You can stand up for the position of the deputy secretary, or sorry, the secretary general, or even the president. Not trying to threaten your position, Justin, but it is open. It is up for grabs, and we need to ensure that as leaders, we're given a tough time for our position. Otherwise it will not be worthwhile. We need competition at the end of the day, and we need to make sure that we've earned this position so that we can perform properly. So yeah, who knows, maybe one of you who's listening over here could contest for Justin's position in the next General Assembly.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that. I think IAPSS is greatly in need of a lot more people to run, and make things a little bit competitive. I think that would be good. Especially, I'd like to see future IAPSS presidents from countries that haven't had an IAPSS president before, right? So, perhaps more representation from IAPSS Asia at the global level would be very interesting to consider, right? And in the event that this recording goes up after the General Assembly, which I just kind of realized as we were talking, this well, we're having
talking about the General Assembly in May. Don't worry.
Yeah, there's also one in May. If you're not, if you're watching this after December 12th, then 2020, then in May 2021, we're going to have another one, and that is our main one where we have our general elections for all our elected positions. So the one on December 12th is just it's like a by-election essentially. So there's a few vacant ones that are going to be filled, and then yeah, we're going to be voting on some interesting motions. One involves relocation, I guess, to a new country, so that's kind of an interesting kind of concept to consider. And yeah, also expanding the scope of the advisory board and just kind of outlining what that means. So essentially our judicial branch, quote unquote, that handles all the times when I guess the conflict and competition perhaps gets a bit too heated. They're there to provide some clarity in that regard. But I encourage everyone watching this to check the IAPSS website. There should be a link that outlines motions or instructions to submit motions on the online. And I know for the December 12th General Assembly, the deadline to submit motions and candidacies is actually today, I believe. So I think
what's the deadline for the General Assembly in May?
Oh, the one for the General Assembly in May would likely be 2 weeks before it happens, so probably is sometime in late April. So for that one, you have lots of time to wait for that, and I guess we'll try to get this out sometime before December 12th, but it would likely be that after that motion and candidacy deadline. But you can still show up and vote, and perhaps move some kind of emergency motion, and that can be interesting. But yeah, lots of possibilities for sure there.
For sure, for sure. Maybe one day, IAPS will have all of these offices in different regions and with their own staff going forward, which would be an incredible future for IAPS as well.
All right. And I think with that, is there anything else, Rutaba, that you would like to add or that you would like to say, not just to political science students in the present watching this, but in the future as well, because this might be a year that students in future, not just future IAPSS team members, but also future students would look back to see what IAPSS was like during the year of COVID-19 or the COVID-19 period, I guess, if it goes on for multiple years. So is there any kind of closing statement that you would like to give, any words of encouragement for those students?
Um, just that I hope the world is as open as we've tried to make it in the past couple of centuries, and it's more open, more conducive. And if there are people watching that, IAPSS could contribute to making the world a bit better. I truly believe that. So yeah, nothing really. I've said all I could. But if you're somebody speculating joining IAPSS, do it. Really, there's no rocket science to it. You'll find a great supporting team over here. And yeah, you could probably share in the sense of the sense of accomplishment that we feel working for IAPSS as well. So yeah, here's to hoping that the world is as open as we imagine it to be, that the doors are not shut, that we continue to collaborate together as communities, because I know there's a reversal of that going on, and that we are able to find like a sweet spot um, between being nationalist, but at the same time global citizens, so to say. Yeah.
Okay, wise words indeed. Thank you very much for having us here, or I guess, thank you very much for being here, and yeah, this is I think you have a lot of things for students, both in the present and future to really think about here. So it's yeah, thank you very much yeah, for your patience as well in regarding this, and yeah, it's definitely looking forward to those upcoming events.
For sure. Thank you for also having me, and for everyone who's listened to this interview so far. Thank you for your patience. And like a broken record, once again, check out IAPSS's website and their social media pages. We have a lot of events coming up, and this is me with just one region. We have 6 other regions, so you can just imagine the scale of the work that we're doing at IAPSS. And I hope that you're able to find something that will interest you. We are, looking forward to hosting as many members as possible this year and the next, and for many, many years to come.
Exactly, and that also goes if you're a school level or national political science student association who isn't yet part of IAPSS. Please reach out to us, and we'll make sure your members are all set up with our memberships and everything, so you're part of our global community. So thank you very much, and stay tuned for, I guess, future IAPSS YouTube videos that will be coming out on a variety of topics. So yeah, lots of exciting things to look forward to, and yeah, so take care. Thank you so much, Rutaba, and have a great rest of your evening, I believe.
You too, Justin. Bye.
Bye-bye.